Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts, Keith and JD. Welcome back for the probably one of the last football editions.
I would say so, yeah.
Maybe one more, I guess. We technically have put one out the last day of last day Iowa's bowl season.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the college football playoffs after the final round of bowl games, I guess.
Yeah, most likely.
But first, let's do some housekeeping here. Let's do a little bit of question of the week from last week. Last week's question was, Kirk Ferentz has been at Iowa for 26 years, or 26 seasons, and wanted to know how many times in those 26 years Iowa has not been invited to a bowl game outside of the COVID year, which, I mean, they were invited, they just didn't get to go. A couple people piped in. I don't remember if they said it the right answer or not. I can't remember for sure.
I think one got it right, yeah.
Yeah. The correct answer is 4.
4.
1999 and 2000, 2007, and then 2013 were the years that Iowa did not get invited to a bowl game. Now,
right.
The keyword being invited, because they were bowl eligible in 2007. They just did not get an invite at 6-6.
Seems kind of strange by nowadays standards that some 5-7 teams are getting invited.
Yeah, you've had several bowl games added since then, so
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Waters it down just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you start getting 5-7 teams that are going to bowl games, it kind of tends to dilute the importance. Or, well, a lot of people would say bowl games aren't important anymore. Which a football fan, bowl games are important to him because it's more football.
Yeah,
That's the way I look
but
at
really,
it.
It doesn't amount to a whole lot. I mean, as far
it's
as
an exhibition, glorified
yeah,
exhibition.
it is. It does add a stat to the coach's resume as far as win or loss, but
and the players. You know,
yeah, I guess you could say that.
It's an extra game if they don't decide to opt out. You know,
we're seeing a lot of that, but that's okay.
Yeah, it is what it is. So,
yeah.
But we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But let's first start out with the week that was in basketball. Let's start out with the women this week.
Yeah, the Hawkeye women. If you remember, we recorded last Saturday night, so we didn't get the Sunday game that they played on the road, starting conference, and that was a 68-66 loss. It was one of those games where Iowa had that game. It basically was ahead 7, 8, 9 points, I think was the highest. And then just kept letting Michigan State come back. And then Iowa would go ahead again a little bit further. Then he'd come back. Well, it got to the point where Michigan State's pressure got to be, enough that Iowa started turning the ball over quite a bit. And then they got behind. Iowa got behind. And then they had to try to catch back up. And they did. They actually had the ball down 67-66 with just a few seconds left, and couldn't really get a good shot off, and then fouled at the end. And the lady made one shot, made it 68-66. That's how basically it ended. And it was one of those games you felt like you kind of had I can't say you had it, but it was well within your grasp to get that game. And it's just a turnover here, a foul there. Any small detail like that might have actually put you over the top. So, looking at things the way you look at them, I think the telltale sign, and I can go through the stats real quick here. I'm just going to go through them real quick. Iowa shot 36% from the field. Michigan State shot 40. Iowa shot 36% from 3-point line, and Michigan State shot 32. Iowa shot 73% from the free throw line to 59% for Michigan State. Iowa had 40 rebounds to Michigan State's 34. But here's the stat that probably doomed Iowa, and it's been a stat that's doomed Iowa one other time before: 22 turnovers.
Yep.
Remember the Tennessee game when Iowa gave up 30 and lost, and it was a closer game till the end? I think Iowa just absolutely needs to value every possession. I think that's just, 22 turnovers. If you want to be a team that's going to be there in the final, few weeks of the season, you have to clean that up. That can't continue. Shooting free throws at 73%, that's fine. I'll take that. 36% from three. Yeah, I'd like to see it up closer to 40, but 36 is better than it's been. Field goal percentage 36. That's the same as what they shot 3-pointers. You'd like to see that a little higher. You'd like to see some more shots down, especially like Addie O'Grady and Ava Hayden and Hannah Stolke would get some, closer to the rim shots. But 22 turnovers. Just that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you bad.
Yeah, and you started to see that a little bit in the game yesterday or Friday as well. That we can talk about.
We'll go over that.
Northern Iowa.
Yeah, so I don't know. Going on the road to start Big Ten Conference is tough, especially going to Michigan State. Michigan State hasn't lost a game. I don't know what they've done since Iowa.
Now.
They what?
They got beat pretty bad by.
Oh, did they?
Somebody.
Okay, I didn't see that.
I think yesterday maybe.
So they're either 9-1 or 10-1, and they were rated I think 17th when Iowa took them on. But you got to take that game and just say, okay, we're moving on from that. And we're just going to look ahead. And do you have any closing thoughts on the Michigan State game?
No, just like you said, turnovers killed them, and that has been what has cost them at this point from being undefeated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And probably a top 10 team.
Yeah, after Friday night's game, Iowa's 10-2, and the two losses are Michigan State and Tennessee. And what do the two games have in common?
52 turnovers.
Both teams, it was turnovers, and both teams pressured Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State didn't have the kind of smothering defense from a pressure standpoint that Tennessee had, but it still bothered Iowa. They still picked them up 3/4 to almost full court sometimes. So they were in their Iowa's face, and it bothers Iowa. We talked about this, that the key to beating Iowa is if you've got the horses to pressure Iowa, do it, because that's going to bother them. You're going to get some cheap turnovers. Iowa just can't handle the ball.
It's like they don't have a press breaking play. It's like, let's get it into whoever to try to get it up the court. You got people that are handling the ball that shouldn't be handling the ball, or just not in places where they should be. You're not flowing back for the help, and then you're having to make a long cross court pass, and guys can get away with it a little bit easier, a little more strength on the pass, but it's a little harder to make some of those cross court passes unless you're just unless you're Caitlin Clark, who sees everything about 3 steps before it happens.
Yeah, that's
you don't have that anymore.
Not going to have that anytime soon, I wouldn't imagine. But lazy inbound passes sometimes. I think just inbounds. Their inbounds plays are not good. They're a lot of standing around. Somebody will flash to under the basket, but if it's taken, if the defense is defending that, then it's like, okay, now what do I do? And they haven't gotten a 5-second call yet, but I think that's coming up.
Pretty close.
That's going to happen. It's been close.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if Jan needs to work on inbounds passes and setting screens and getting somebody open, but there was a couple of times when somebody would take the ball out and they'd look at their initial person that they were going to throw to, and if they were covered, then they would look at the second person who was covered. Well, then the second person would then break open. Instead of coming right back to them, then they tried to force a pass to the person that was their second option that was also covered. Because a lot of times I would watch, I don't know if it was Hannah Stolke or somebody was inbound in the pass, and it might have been Lucy Olson. They looked on somebody first, didn't see that it was open, went to the other person and just stayed on them. Well, what happened was that person that was the original primary had broken free towards the basket or curled around the cut and was open. And she tried to force it into the second person who was just standing with their arm up, like, what are you going to do there? Mm-hmm. You can't just throw it into them because you're going to get it stolen. And they did get it stolen a couple of times. That's where, you have to be patient a little bit. I think sometimes they get nervous that 5 seconds is going to get called on them, and it might very well, but they're going to have to get figured out. And I think that's something Jan needs to work on in practice is, running different plays, running different inbound scenarios. And, if you have to adjust to one, go to a different one.
That's something she should talk to Fran about. Fran is really good at the inbounds plays.
Yeah, he gets the ball in pretty good. They only have to call timeout about once a game when they have problems.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I think if you looked, the bugaboo and if you tracked it throughout the season, points off turnovers has kept some games way, way closer than they should have been, and lost them games that they should probably have won.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
There's really no realistic reason why they shouldn't be undefeated right now.
Yeah, I may be okay with giving up to Tennessee. Their smothering defense was just more than Iowa could handle at that point. But that Michigan State game, I thought Iowa had every opportunity in the world to win that. In fact, they did. If they hit a shot at that last, when I think it was Lucy Olson or somebody tried to put up a shot and then missed it, and then they just didn't matter at that point after that. But you make that shot, you're up 68-67, and Michigan State has the ball with like a minute or with a second to go. You're probably not going to allow them to score on that. So that's how close they were.
But you cut down those turnovers, and you take away some of those points off those turnovers. That's not even as close, and you don't have to be relying on that.
Exactly.
That's the same as that Tennessee game where 30 turnovers and they got 28 points off turnovers.
They got a lot. I know that was,
and you lost by 9.
Yeah, very telltale signs that they were just not
on both turnovers and points off turnovers. You're winning by 5.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I said that before. You got to value every possession as if it's your last, and you can't make lazy passes, and you can't pass down to the middle, the center in the middle if she's not there, if she's not open. That we saw that again a couple times with UNI. The next game we're going to talk about, where Iowa would telegraph the pass, and the girl from would just run around the corner. And it's almost like Addie O'Grady or whoever was down there was just leaning back against the other player. And then when she threw the pass in, it was like she stepped back because she didn't have anybody behind her again. Well, that person had run around the corners quick and intercepted the ball. I saw that a couple of times at UNI. They've got some quick little girls that are, pretty fast underneath the basket, and not a lot of height, but and that's something that we'll see that Iowa did kind of take advantage of a little bit, was the height difference. But moving on to University of Northern Iowa on Friday night. Okay, Iowa was led by Lucy Olson's 21 points. Sydney Falter had 9 rebounds. Iowa shot 50% from the field. UNI shot 48%. Iowa shot 38% from three-point line. UNI shot 36%. Free throws, 91%. Iowa was 91% from the free throw line. I think they only missed 2 shots.
Yeah.
And UNI shot 68% from the free throw line. Iowa had 38 rebounds to UNI's 24. Iowa did have 12 turnovers, and UNI had 9. Had a commanding lead in the first half. I think they were up 17 or 18 at one point, Iowa. Then they just slowly started. I don't know if it's a third quarter or what, that they just come out of the halftime lackadaisical, lethargic. I don't know whether they just have to get their feet wet again. They give up quite a bit of points in that third quarter and didn't score a lot. So it really let UNI back in that game. And I think UNI came within 1 point at one point in the fourth quarter. I think it was it 82-81 maybe? Something to that effect. Anyway, Iowa won the game 92-86. And it was a fun game to watch for the most part. It was back and forth up and down the court. And I don't know. I thought Addie O'Grady had trouble at times, but she had success at times. There were times I was just like, oh, I don't know if she's in this game or not. And then she would go on a little run where she'd score 8 or 9 points right in a row and look pretty good doing it. Yeah. I mean, I thought Lucy Olson had a good game for the most part. But that little Maya
McDermott.
McDermott. Wow, what a player, right?
Yeah, and
Too bad she had eligibility. Too bad she couldn't get contacted or not contacted, but get an idea. Maybe she'd like to go to a Big Ten school because she could light it up at Iowa, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that was, it's crazy because I see it happen to both the men's and women's team. It's just somebody gets hot and everything they throw up goes in. It doesn't matter. There was stuff that had no right to go in that she was putting up that was just like, swish.
Yeah. But she's a pretty good scorer. She scored, I think, 30. She ended up with 30.
Yeah,
Maya
so.
McDermott. And that other girl at 24, Luby, she's pretty good too. I mean, those two basically kept them in the game. But, it was good to get out of there with a win. It was a home win. I don't know what more there's to say. It was a back and forth kind of game after Iowa gave up that pretty big lead. It was nice to see some of the freshmen and Leah Guyton and some of those get in the game and play considerable minutes. Taylor Stremlow, I thought, played a pretty good game. She had some impact in the game. She didn't score a lot of points, but just from a defensive standpoint and rebounding standpoint, I thought she contributed pretty well. She seems to be the one freshman that comes off the bench like first.
Yeah.
And she's been getting a majority of the minutes from the freshman side of standpoint, they've got some time off, and then they come back to Carver Hawkeye on December the 29th. If I remember right, isn't that a week from today? That's Tuesday. A week from today. And they play Purdue, a 7-5 Purdue team. So they should have no trouble with them, but hard to say. I'd say you take every game as if it's their South Carolina at this point.
Yeah.
Don't take anyone lightly. The Wisconsins and the Minnesotas and of the women's basketball world, you can't take them lightly or they'll sneak up and beat you. Everybody's got a quality team at this point. Some are just better than others, and some just, you have more talent. But if you're not talented and you don't, you outwork the other team, there's a good chance you can win that game. So, going forward now is from here on out, it'll be conference games only. And 10-2 going into conference. If somebody would ask me if I think Iowa would be 10-2 going into conference, would I take that? Yeah, I'd take it.
Well, and with a realistic shot that they could have been 12-0.
Yeah, really, really, have a day where you can actually not turn over the ball against Tennessee, and same thing with Michigan State. Yeah, pretty easily be 12-0 right now.
Yep.
But that's how it goes. And that's basketball. You're not going to win everything every time. There's two teams out there, and both teams are trying to win the game. Yep. I'm just glad that they're taking care of home court, and I hope they continue to take care of home court. I think that's going to help them down the line, and especially when it comes to seeding for the Big Ten tournament as well as the NCAA tournament, if they are good enough to get there. And I don't know right now if I would think that they shouldn't have a problem getting to the big dance, but
and you look at at least the two losses are quality losses. They're not. You're not losing to somebody that you shouldn't lose to. You were right there. One of them was on a neutral court, and the other was on the road, so they both be quad one losses.
Right.
I think Tennessee was up to like maybe 12th last I saw, maybe.
I haven't seen the updated rankings yet, and I know that it'll be changing again tomorrow. So yeah. A lot to be excited for with this team. A lot of, I noticed when they were playing and they had their starting lineups against UNI, I noticed that UNI's got a lot of seniors, and so did Iowa. I think they started 4 seniors out of 5, and Hannah's the only one that wasn't.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And so next year, you're going to have to replace some guys. But let's don't talk about next year yet. We got a lot to go with this year. And we'll just see how far these girls can go. And it's exciting to watch their development. Life without Caitlin goes on. And we'll just get behind them and cheer for them and hopefully keep them moving.
Yep, absolutely. Well, speaking of keeping moving, let's move on over to the men's side.
Yep. Same thing.
2 games.
2 games. It was a 2-0 week for the men. First game was last Sunday against New Orleans.
Not much of a game.
104-57, and Iowa had that from the jump. It wasn't even a close game. I don't know what I really want to say about this game. How much can you gain from it? Owen Freeman had 22 points. Peyton Sanford and Cooper Koch both had 5 rebounds. Iowa shot 63% from the field, 48% from 3, and 67% from the line. They did actually out-rebound somebody. They don't usually do that. They did out-rebound New Orleans 33-28. But Iowa had 11 blocks. That was kind of the weird stat. But they only had 6 turnovers.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids played. Everyone that was available to play played.
Yeah. And the good thing of it is it's the rebounding numbers, 33-28. That's down on the total numbers just because of the hot shooting.
Yeah.
I'm okay if you get out rebounded, if you're shooting lights out and you're not getting the opportunities. That's fine. It's just don't get out rebounded 40-25, and most of those be offensive where you're giving up second chance points and getting beat by 6-8 points because you give up second half 15 or 16 second half or second chance points.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the frustrating part. But that's like you said, there's not much to say about that game. It's definitely one of those teams that was well overmatched.
Yeah, for sure.
If I remember right, that head coach came in May 1st, so he came in like last day of the portal and had to put a team together. So I don't fault him for that. So give him a little bit of a break on that. But, I think James White was a pretty decent player that they have. Mm-hmm. I'd take him. But yeah, there's not much else you can really say.
Yeah, so with that, I guess we move on to Saturday's game.
Yes.
And this was a rematch of the NIT game that the Iowa played against Utah. This was the team that beat Iowa out of the NIT last year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. Peyton Stafford only had like 5 points or something for that entire game. Well, he didn't let that happen this time. He had 24, and he also had 8 rebounds. So that's a pretty good game for him. But he did shoot the ball quite a bit, and he wasn't necessarily always on, but he did enough. He drove the ball well. I thought Utah had a good team. Those 2 Madsen brothers, whew, I'd like to see them transfer.
That 7-1 Lovering, he was a load down low.
Yeah, and it didn't help that Owen Freeman got into foul trouble. But here's the game. Iowa won at 95-88, and it was played in the Pentagon up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's a neutral site game. Obviously closer to Iowa, so it was kind of a pro-Iowa crowd, and you could see that. Iowa shot 53% from the field to Utah's 52%. Iowa shot 45% from 3 to Utah's 33%. Iowa shot 75% from the free throw line to Utah's 69%. Utah had 34 rebounds to Iowa's 27. Both teams had 11 turnovers. So, pretty evenly matched for the most part. The only difference was probably be Iowa's 3-point shooting was 12% better. And I think
the free throw shooting.
The thing that strikes me about last night's game was that lineup that Iowa went with in the last 3 or 4 5 minutes, with Dembele being in there instead of Owen Freeman because he had 4 fouls. They never did go back. Owen never got back in the game.
Mm-mm. So he missed the last almost 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah,
and 4 fouls.
I kept thinking, when are they going to bring him back in? It's 2 minutes. When are they going to? This would be a good time maybe. And Fran just says, you know what? I've got 5 men out here that are really doing well. I'm not going to disrupt that. I'm going to let these guys finish the game out, unless, Dembele, of course, had 4 fouls. If he would have fouled one more time, then he had to bring Owen in. Yeah. So, he knew enough to say to himself, we're doing really decent on the offensive end, enough to keep ahead, and we're doing well enough on the defensive end to keep them from scoring, and we are rebounding. So I'm going to keep these guys out there, and that was probably a good coaching move on his part, is just to keep with the hot team, the hot group of 5 guys, and that's what he ended the game with was, Dembele instead of Freeman in there, and not that not that Laji did, a lot, but he was he was doing some defensive stuff and getting some things done. Rebounding, he did have a couple three or four rebounds when they really needed rebounds.
It does seem like he has changed his style since coming off the bench.
You hit it on the head about 2 podcasts ago when you said, not everybody is a starter. Some guys that feel better coming off the bench, and you've mentioned it, and I agree with you, and I think that's exactly 100% the case with him. Is I think the pressure's off him. He can sit and watch the game for the first minute or 2 or 3 or 4, however long it takes, and then he can get in and kind of feel like, okay, I've had a chance to see what the other team has.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what they're trying to do, and I now know what I need to do to go in and be successful. That sometimes, not everybody is a starter.
Yeah, and then there's guys that thrive in that starting role, like Drew Thelwell. When you move him into the starting position, I mean, he's a completely different player. Not that he was a bad player prior to. He's more assertive. He's more demonstrative. He's more active.
Yeah.
I
really like him.
Yeah, I wish we had more than 1 year with him.
Yeah, I do too. It is what it is, but I saw Iowa pick somebody up here this week too. A power forward, I believe.
Briscoe.
We'll talk about him another time. So it was kind of nice to see that.
One thing I was going to say was the impressive part about the win against Utah was Iowa did it with a short bench. They did it with guys that were not available. Traore was not available. Mulvey was not available. Evan Bronze was not available. You basically did it with 8 guys. And you throw Coop in there because Coop didn't really play a ton. I guess Carter Kingsbury got in a few minutes in there as well, but you
took a charge.
You're doing things with. He plays some really good defense too.
Mm-hmm.
But you're doing things shorthanded, and you've been doing them all season long. Kind of makes you wonder what this team would be like with a full complement of players.
Well,
would it be a detriment because you've got to try to figure out how to get those guys in there?
Yeah, that could be part of it too. Is you're disrupting the flow of a group of 5 guys out there that are really really doing well and performing at a high level, and then you throw another person in there, it might throw off the rhythm of the whole thing at that point. But that's why you have practice. You get these guys in, and it shouldn't really matter who's in there. But if you do get comfortable with somebody, you go with it, I guess, and you run it as long as you can until somebody gets too tired to continue, or you pull them out. But that's just, you just have to kind of feel your way as a coach to feel your way through the team and the game as to what group of 5 guys that you can put on a floor that work good together.
Right.
And that's what we saw last night with Laji being in there as opposed to Owen.
Yeah.
But that's a quad 2 win. That's probably Iowa's best win of the season.
That's probably a quad 1, wouldn't it?
I think it's a quad 2, they said, after I read everything.
Okay.
It could be a quad 1 later on down the line, but right now it's a quad 2 considered. And I think that has to be Iowa's best win of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think of anybody better than that?
Maybe Northwestern.
Northwestern,
Conference
perhaps.
Conference
I don't
game.
think
Northwestern played well.
Yeah, I don't think. I was thinking Washington State, but they're not. I don't think they would be a quad 1.
That's another neutral site game. That's
right.
I don't know. I'd say it's probably been Northwestern based on the way Northwestern's been playing lately.
Yeah, maybe. So we move on to the next game. They play New Hampshire at 6:00 on Monday the 30th. So here's what you can do: you start to watch the Iowa Bowl game at 1:30. That runs probably till 4:30. Get yourself something to eat, get settled in, get you some popcorn, get ready for the 6:00 game, and you can watch Iowa pretty much from 1:30 almost all the way through to 8. So there you go, you Hawkeye fans. It's going to be one of those games one of those days you can watch the football team and the basketball team play the same day. Doesn't happen too often.
And then the football is the only bowl game on that day.
It is. So yeah, they'll have the football watching crowd to themselves that day.
Yep.
Speaking of bowl games, we're going to do a real quick
bowl game.
We're going to do a real quick bowl preview, and then you wanted to talk about the playoffs, and we can talk about that. Well, let's go through this bowl game real quick, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, so I was going to be playing the 23rd rated Missouri Tigers. I'm on cold medicine, so I'm messed up. Missouri has had 5 players opt out of the game. Backup quarterback Sam Horn, linebacker Chuck Hicks, tight end Brett Norfleet, wide receiver Luther Burden, and right tackle Armand Membu. They have a 9-3 record. They are coached by Eli Drinkowitz. He is in his 5th year. They are 9-3 and then 5-3 in the conference. Their 3 losses are to Texas A&M, Alabama, which they were shut out by, and South Carolina, were their other loss. Missouri, we can go through their rankings real quick as far as the NCAA and everybody. Total offense, Missouri is 61st. In relation to that, Iowa is 113th. Rushing yards, Missouri is 54th, and Iowa is 20th. Passing yards, Missouri is 77th, and Iowa is 131st. Points per game, 60th at 29.1 versus Iowa's 66th at 28. When it comes to defense, Iowa is 15th in defense, and Missouri is 20th. Rushing yards, Missouri is 41st, Iowa is 27th. Passing yards, Missouri is 25th, Iowa is 36th. And as far as points allowed, Missouri is 18th and Iowa is 9th. So Missouri's 18th. They allow about 20.1 points per game. Their quarterback, Brady Cook, is 182 of 288 for 63.2% completion percentage. He's also thrown for 2,238 yards, 9 TDs, but he's had 2 pickoffs, which isn't bad. Running back Nate Noel, 157 carries.
Touchdowns.
What's that?
Is that right? Only 9 passing touchdowns.
9 passing touchdowns, 2 picks. Nate Noel for 157 carries, for 830 yards. That's a 5.12 yards per rush average. He's averaging 80 yards a game, but he's only scored 3 TDs all year. Wide receiver Theo Weiss, 55 receptions, 809 yards, 3 TDs. I'm going to go through their kicking real quick, and then we'll hit their defense. Punting, Luke Bauer, he's punted 44 times for a 41.5 yard average. Blake Craig is a freshman. He's been kicking for Missouri the whole season. He's 33 of 34 on extra points. He's 22 of 32 on field goals with a 56-yard long. Defense. Their leading tackler is linebacker Corey Flagg. He's got 76 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 pickoff. Right behind him is linebacker Tristan Newsom, 64 tackles and 1 sack. Their highest interception guy only has 2. Their player, cornerback Drayden Norwood, has 2 pickoffs. Now here's the person you need to watch out for. This is going to be a name you might hear quite a bit on Monday. Johnny Walker. He is an edge rusher. He has 7.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He does not have any interceptions, does not have a TD. Missouri rushes approximately 40 times a game, average, for 170 yards. And that is rushing for a 5.5 yard average. That's really all I have on Missouri. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. Iowa really has only had 2 holdouts or opt-outs. Other than, I didn't mention guys that are transferring. They're obviously not going to play, so I didn't mention them. It's just basically the people who are eligible to play, who have not transferred but aren't not playing for whatever reason. Iowa has 2, Jamari Harris and Caleb Johnson. Those are the 2 that are healthy but have decided to look to the future instead of playing in this game.
I'm curious. You said that edge rusher Johnny Walker is the other edge rusher Jim Beam?
Yeah, might be.
Jack Daniels.
Could be Eagle Rare, or could be whatever you like. But that's his name, Johnny Walker. And I think you're going to hear his name mentioned a few times. He's going to be probably in the backfield a few times. Sounds like he's a pretty decent player. So there you go. That's Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know.
Kind of interesting. It sounds like they kick a lot of field goals and don't score a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go through their schedule as far as like, I know they won their first game really big over some no-name school. I can't remember who it was. But for the most part, they just beat who they were supposed to beat pretty much and lost to who they were supposed to lose to. And I don't know, 9-3 is not a bad record at all. I was 8-4, so I guess can't really say much about 9-3.
Listening to the stats when he's, nine touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and the top rusher has 3 touchdowns, and their top receiver has 3 touchdowns. I'm like, but yet when you listen 22 of 32 or 24 of 34 from their field goal department, that's a lot of field goals.
Yeah. Well, they're probably their main playmaker is that guy that decided to opt out. I had his name there a minute ago. Go back and I'll tell you who he was. He's kind of their playmaker guy, the one that, like if it's third down and they need 10 yards, he's the guy that they go to. Luther Burden. I think he had a few touchdowns, but he's opted out. And I think they went to their tight end a few times. I don't know how many he ended up with as far as receptions. Because once he opted out, I was like, well, once you opt out, you're not going to be able to any help to them. So I didn't really look at his stats, but that's where we're at with those. You wanted to talk about the playoff, and I think that's something that we need to talk about because it's kind of a hot button topic with people nowadays. So why don't you go ahead and then I'll kind of follow up with agree or maybe add something if you don't hit something I want to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I watched the games over the weekend. I'm going to always stand on the fence of Indiana deserved to be in. They played their way in. They did what they needed to do. They had a road game in December against the 5th-ranked team who doesn't play in a conference, who had 1 loss as well. So it's not like, they were going up there, oh, we're 11-1. They played a 6-5 team or something and got absolutely boat raced. They got beat by 10. Yeah, maybe you can say that the final score wasn't indicative of how the game went. Margin of victory was only 10 for Notre Dame at the end of the day. When you compare that to what happened to SMU, who got beat by 28, or Clemson, who got beat by 14, which was the next closest game, or, God forbid, the mighty SEC number 2 team or number 3 team, whatever it was, in Tennessee, who, let's be honest, that 42-16 or 42-17, whatever it was a gift because that should have been a pass interference in the end zone and it never should have been a pick. I don't think that kid ever had his foot in bounds with full possession of the ball. So right there, you're looking at probably 49-10, not 42-17. So the almighty SEC's representative over the weekend sure laid an egg. And, the narrative that really aggravated me was SMU didn't belong. Indiana didn't belong. Well, Tennessee, they're an up-and-coming team. They're starting to figure themselves out. No, they got blown out.
Yeah.
They got boat raced.
Yep.
And that was supposed to be the closest matchup because that was the closest seeded teams. And that was the biggest blowout. Yeah. So don't give me this SEC is superior. SEC, that's a Tennessee team that beat Alabama. And you want to sit there and say, well, Alabama deserved to be in. No, I think Alabama fans would say, well, if Alabama won 1 game, they still deserve to be in. And SEC fans would say, well, why don't we just put 12 of our teams in the playoffs and just say to heck with everybody else because that's what we really want to see. And as a fan of college football and a fan that is not an SEC fan, screw you. I don't want to see that. I don't care. If you're not deserving, you lost 3 games. And then you throw on top of that the fact that you lost to the Tennessee team that just got absolutely boat raced. Embarrassed.
Blown out.
And you want to say you felt like you should have been in ahead of Indiana or SMU? No, don't give me that crap.
Well, I don't know. SMU to me, if I had to choose, I probably would have left them out, to be honest. But
I'd have put BYU in. Or Miami.
Maybe Miami. I don't know. I just you lost the ACC championship game. I mean,
by one score.
By one score, but here's the deal. Let's look at the conferences as a whole. You got the SEC and the Big Ten. They're basically the top two. I mean, everybody knows that. Then you've got the Big 12, and then you got ACC. Really, those are your four conferences that are really contributing to everything. Really, the Big Ten and the SEC are the top dogs of the two. And those are the ones that always got the best, or the highest. I mean, it's like Iowa. It's like the Big Ten has 4 teams, and the SEC has 3 teams, and the next highest has 2. So, if you're going to weigh these things by, you shouldn't never weigh them by conference. You should always weigh them by what the team has done. But you also have to look at, and I kind of agree with some of the people that, your strength of schedule has to have some bearing on the situation. But by the same token, though, if you win 11 games in a power conference, you should be in. That's hard to do. And I'm sorry, you can say that they played nobody in the Big Ten. These schedules are made up years in advance as far as the schedule, as who's they're playing, where they're playing them. You can't tell me that if they're putting these schedules together and they're looking back on 2024 and they're saying, okay, in 2029, you don't know if Michigan's going to be good. You don't know if Indiana's going to be any good. You don't know anybody's going to be any good.
Well, here's the other thing you can look at. Indiana beats Michigan. Michigan beat Ohio State in Columbus. Ohio State just throttled one of the best teams in the SEC. Now you're going to diminish Indiana's record based off that? How can you diminish that? Because, I can play hypotheticals just like an SEC fan. Hey, if Alabama had to play a Big Ten schedule, they'd be lucky to be 8-4. I can play those hypotheticals. I don't have to prove that. I don't have any way to prove it either. All I have to do is just say, oh, well, in my opinion, this is what is going to happen. Well, it doesn't work that way. That's not the way the world works. I think the SEC is 1,812-0 in hypotheticals this offseason. So, I don't buy this. Well, the SEC is such a better conference. You didn't prove it.
No.
You faced up against another conference yesterday, and you got obliterated. And your other representative from your conference in Texas probably played the weakest champion in the field in Clemson, who was not the Clemson of old.
Right.
So, and that was the next closest game outside of the Notre Dame Indiana game. So,
right.
It's not like your Texas boys are invincible.
Yeah,
you look at that. That's a Big 12 team. A former Big 12 team walks into the SEC and takes that crown.
Yeah.
I just don't buy this whole SEC is so much better than everybody else. Put them on an even playing field, and that doesn't work that way.
There's been a lot of discussion online about Indiana. I saw Herb Street had said something about Indiana, and then people were jumping on that. And Indiana, it should have been Alabama or Ole Miss or something. No, you can't.
No, because Indiana didn't lose to a 6-5 team.
You can't take an 11-1 team and say, well, you didn't play anybody, even though you were in a power conference, and just dismiss them. You can't do that. That's not fair to them. These are kids that have worked their rear ends off. They've earned this. They played everybody on their schedule, and they lost to Ohio State on the road, who just got done obliterating Tennessee, who is the, number 3 team in the SEC, I suppose you could call them?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Indiana didn't get beat as bad as Tennessee did. So you're telling me you'd rather put
team in the Big 12, or Big 10, no less.
Yeah, I don't get the logic. I mean, granted, we are Big Ten people. I mean, obviously, Hawkeye fans, we're Big Ten people, and we're going to stick up for our conference. But I don't know how you can say, oh, Alabama would just destroy them. Well, you said it before. You can't do hypotheticals like that.
No, absolutely not.
Congratulations to those the teams that are moving on. I'm excited to see the Ohio State rematch with Oregon.
I think Ohio State will beat them.
We'll see. I mean, isn't that like the Rose Bowl?
It's the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. So here's something that's kind of interesting is, you are a conference champion and you get to sit out the first week, but you don't get to play a home game.
And that sitting out might be
not a
might
good
be
thing.
an issue.
Yeah. So, Ohio State getting to play a last home game and so did Notre Dame, of course. And, it's going to be interesting to see. I was glued to the Indiana game on Friday night, and I was glued to the Ohio State game last night. But the other two I didn't really watch that closely. I did watch some of Penn State and SMU a little bit in the afternoon. I did watch a little tiny bit of the Texas Clemson game, not a lot of it. Those two really didn't move the needle for me that much, but the Ohio State and Tennessee game did, and so did the Notre Dame, because I don't know. I'm not rooting for Indiana. I was never rooting for Indiana. I was never rooting against them. But by the same token, I think they belong. I think they did what they needed to do. They come up short. They lost to the higher seed, the better seed, and good for them. I mean, they had a good season.
I think somebody put a post out on the Twitter or something that showed the quality of athletes that Notre Dame had compared to Indiana. And it's like, 5-star, and then you had so many 4-stars, and then you had like a handful of 3-stars. And you look at Indiana, it was no 5 stars, a small handful of 4-stars, and a ton of 3-stars. People talk about this, going back to this a little bit, where your strength of schedule, and I get that, but you also have to look at the losses. You can look at the wins all you want, and if you want to throw out the losses, then there's no sense in even playing the games. But you've got to look at the losses, and you got to say, Alabama had some good wins. They had 2 terrible losses. Terrible losses.
Yeah.
That's enough right there to keep them out.
And here's something else we talked.
Indiana had no terrible losses.
Right. No. Here's something else we talked about too: is the disparity between the SEC only plays 8 games, conference games, and the Big Ten plays 9. That's another. You don't get to play a 4th FCS team essentially. I mean, come on, SEC. You played 4 basically. For the most part, I'm not saying everybody did, but you played 4 teams you knew you could win. You knew you could beat. Well, even if the Big Ten did that, they scheduled 3 teams that they knew they could beat. That's still 9 games in conference versus 8 games in conference. Everybody needs to be on the same page here. Everybody needs to be on the same. Either the SEC schedules another conference game, or the Big Ten drops a scheduled conference game and goes to and finds a patsy.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you can sit back and say, okay, now we're even. You're playing 8 conference games and the Big Ten's playing 8. I think what has to happen, I think the NCAA should step into SEC and say, you guys need to play 9 conference games, 3 away games, 3 non-conference games. And that way, everybody, and I don't know how the Big 12 does it. Do they do 9 and 3, or did they? I don't know if the AC does that either. But
say they did. I thought they did 8 as well, but I could be wrong.
So I think that the Big Ten is at a disadvantage for 9 conference games, to some degree.
Yeah, and then you look at the fact that of those 3 non-conference games, most Big Ten teams are playing at least one Power 4 team. Not every one of them, obviously, but most of them are. Michigan played Texas.
Wisconsin played Alabama.
Wisconsin played Alabama. Iowa played Iowa State.
Yeah.
Nebraska played Colorado.
Yeah.
So when all said and done, you're not playing 4 patsies at any point. Whereas, most of the SEC, I'm not saying all of them, because you got to throw in the fact that, Texas did play Michigan, Alabama did play at Wisconsin,
LSU played USC,
and UCLA.
And UCLA, yeah. So good for you, LSU.
Yeah. So I'm looking more like teams like Ole Miss or Arkansas or
Missouri.
Missouri.
They didn't play well
I look at Missouri's
outside.
9-3 and say, okay, you compare that to Iowa's 8-4, they're probably pretty equal. So that's probably a very equal matchup for those two teams on Monday.
I think it was just kind of I don't know, Kirk Herbstreit, you shouldn't say things like that about Indiana maybe didn't deserve to be in, or I don't know if he said those exact words.
He's just towing the corporate line for ESPN of trying to push the narrative that the SEC is all powerful. That's who signs his paycheck now. So he's got to say that they're the best thing since sliced bread. And you know what? Whatever. I don't listen to Herbstreit anymore. I can't watch ESPN games unless I mute him out.
I think down the line they're looking at, and I think there's probably people that are already trying to push this 16 team thing. You're going to get more of what you got this weekend if you do 16 teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, at this point, then you won't have any buys because everybody will have a game to play. But you're still going to see like 1 versus 16, 2, 15 on down the line. Well, you know that the 16th team getting in is going to be a guy probably with 3, maybe even 4 losses, depending on how the season turns out. And you're probably going to go up against a number 1 seed that's got, maybe like an Oregon 11-0 or 12-0 or 13-0 if in this case. You're still going to have issues with blowouts. You're still going to have, you can look at every game at that point and say, well, 16 got beat by 30 points by the number 1 team. Well, okay. The 15th team got obliterated by the second team. These are all things that are going to happen. And then you're going to come back and say, well, this team didn't deserve to be in there. 16, they didn't deserve to be in there. 15, they didn't deserve to be in there either. You've got to stop with this. This is just, that's not how this is played. You put the 12 teams, the way that you have it set up, the standard that you've set, the criteria that you've set as a committee, and you just have to put in the teams and say, these are the 12, deal with it. And I don't care. You can say, oh, this guy didn't deserve, this guy should have been in, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not what occurred. And you said it before, don't lose to somebody like, Oklahoma by 21 points. That's 6-6.
Don't lose to
you don't lose that game. You don't lose.
Don't lose to Kentucky.
I guarantee you are in that tournament.
Don't lose to Kentucky, who finishes 4-8.
Absolutely. So, you can say you beat this, that, and the other, but you've also lost, and you said that before, and I agree with that 100%. It's just, I don't know. They want to try to rationalize their team and try to figure out a way that they can analyze it and make it work to get in. Well, if you can cherry pick stats and cherry pick games and this, that, and the other, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. I just it's you got to draw a line at some point, and I think it's just a simple matter of there's so many SEC fans that are just butthurt over the fact that they didn't get more teams in than the Big Ten. That, well, it's kind of that old, well, if I don't win, I got to change the rules, or I'm going to take my ball and go home.
All right.
Suck it up and deal with it. It's not like you haven't been there the last 15 years. You want to be back in? Win. Don't lose to teams that you shouldn't lose to. Period.
Right.
I mean, you want to claim to be the best team in all of college football. You don't lose to a 6-5 team at the end of the year by 21 points when you're a 14.5 point favorite. You don't do that. You don't lose to a 4-8 Kentucky team. If you're a national championship quality team, you're not losing to a 4-8 Kentucky team. Sorry. That loss right there disqualifies you. I don't care if you were 11-1. That loss right there should have disqualified you, because that is a horrible loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and the thing of it is had they been 11-1 with that horrible loss, they'd have gotten in.
Sure they would.
Nobody would have said a word.
Right.
Oh, well, they're deserving of it. They're 11-1. Yeah, you know what? Okay. It's a bad loss. It was early in the season, fourth game, sixth game of the season. Okay. It's a bad loss. It happens to people. You have a bad game, whatever. Now, how bad was that loss? I don't even remember because I don't care. But the point being is, I would never have said, well, even with that loss, you probably shouldn't be in. theoretically, that's a bad loss and you shouldn't be in because you're not a national championship team if you lose to a 4-8. But you deserve to be in because you played your way in. Now, if you're 9-3 and you have that loss on your record, get out of town. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Those are the same people that say, if we're 11-1 and we lost to Kentucky, we deserve to be in. But then they're turning around and saying, Indiana, your only loss was to number 2
Ohio
at the
State.
time, Ohio State,
You don't
on the
deserve
road. But you don't deserve to be in. But we do at 11-1 with a loss to Kentucky.
Honestly, if I'm looking at the two teams and they say, well, strength of schedule. Yeah, strength of schedule is one thing, but quality of loss.
Yeah.
That probably weighs more in than strength of schedule because you should never, if you're such a great team, you should never lose to a 4-8 team.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it. And, like I said, Indiana didn't lose to a 4-8 team. They lost to a team that's now in the quarterfinals, and they lost to another team that's in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So,
a combined
they
total
played their
of 3
way in.
losses.
They deserve to be there.
They played teams that have a combined total of 3 losses.
Yeah. One of which I think is probably the best team in the field still.
Well, they played good last night, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what.
I've said it all year long. I think that that 1-point loss to Oregon was, they could have avoided that. They should have avoided that. Michigan, that's inexcusable if you're as good as you are, but I get it. It's Michigan. It's the biggest rivalry on your schedule, and look at us. How many times has Iowa been the far superior team to Iowa State and lost on a field goal or something in the last minute, or like a 1-possession game like that?
Right.
So it happens.
I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I know it's coming up here this early this week, middle of the week, and I know a lot of people travel. And I wish everyone a safe travel for the holiday, and I hope that we meet right back here a week from Monday. And you've gotten
still got 2 days.
Joyous, get your merch, people. Did your stuff come in? Oh, we're going to talk about a little bit about the Christmas vacation thing that you went to last Sunday. I don't want to leave people hanging. So I did explain this to a couple people online. You went to that Christmas vacation meet and greet with Chevy Chase.
Yes.
Down in Ottumwa. I had a niece and nephew go. I didn't even know that they were going. A niece married, and then now my nephew's by marriage. They went, and they had pictures taken. They must have had the VIP tickets. And I haven't talked to them yet, but you were there. We talked about last week that rant at the end of the movie that he goes on about his boss when he gets the Jelly of the Month Club bonus. We talked about that maybe down the line. I'd heard online that was ad-libbed. You're going to tell me that it's not. What was the deal there?
So just to put everything into perspective, what this was you got to go and watch a special screening of Christmas Vacation. And then at the end, Chevy Chase and his wife were on stage to answer questions that people were sending in. And a lot of those questions were in regards to, like, who was your favorite Audrey and who was your favorite Rusty, and why did they change every movie? Because, the reality of it is National Lampoon wanted to keep Clark Griswold as a 40-year-old. So they had to change the kids every time because the kids would get too old. So you wanted to keep kids in the same age range. So that's the reason why they did that. But yes, that was the very last question, was about that rant that he went on. He wrote that into the script, and he didn't memorize it. Off screen, when he's looking and he's going through his rant, all the actors are holding cue cards with his rant on it. He's reading basically off of that. Because he says, it was just something that I came up with, and I wrote it down, and I couldn't remember it all, so I had to put it all on cue cards because I wasn't going to be able to memorize it in the right order. And then, so at the very end, they had a cue card for him, and he went on and he did that entire rant about his boss right there on stage. And it was pretty cool for an 81-year-old guy to to put that much effort into it and make it basically sound pretty close to what it was like in the movie. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's a fun
I
time.
assume you had a really good time there.
Yeah.
I haven't really talked to you a whole lot about it. You
There's
did
about
say a
1,100
couple.
people there, I'd say.
Was there anything that surprised you, or that you didn't know that you like? Oh, really? I wouldn't even have thought that.
They asked him, somebody asked him if he could sit down at a holiday meal or spend the holidays with one cast member from any of his movies, who would it be? And he said, without a shadow of a doubt, Randy Quaid.
Yeah, he's a character.
But they also asked him who his favorite actor to work with was, and he said it was Dan Aykroyd. And they did play a clip from Spies Like Us, and it was how they played well off of each other, and they just got along so well. And it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's not going to be another Chevy Chase, I can tell you that.
Yeah. And I can tell you that his favorite Audrey was Juliette Lewis from Christmas Vacation.
Christmas, yeah.
And he said his favorite Rusty was Anthony Michael Hall from the original.
Yeah.
So, and his middle name, if anybody's ever wondering, he's Clark W. Griswold. The W stands for Wilhelm. And the reason why it's Wilhelm is because that came about when they did the European Vacation shoot, and they needed to put needed to basically tie him into German heritage. So they just made the W as Wilhelm. So interesting things.
Yeah, sound like a good time.
So, yeah, that was.
I don't know why they picked Ottumwa, but that's okay.
Well, they did one in Davenport 2 days later too. So
okay, there you go.
I don't know if it's something with the company that was promoting it. I don't know. I just assumed it had something to do with maybe like Tom Arnold or something, some connection to Tom Arnold because he's from Ottumwa or something. But I really don't know. I asked people there and they didn't know either. So,
well, it's good it's good that you enjoyed it, and I'm jealous that I didn't get to. But you said you recorded a lot of their.
I recorded the entire 1 hour interview.
Yeah, so at some point maybe I get to see that.
Yep.
Maybe over Christmas you can show it to me.
Yep.
All right, you ready for the last question of the week, or at the end of this?
Yeah. Yep. We'll ask the question of the week this week. Less of a question trivia, but more of a Iowa playing Missouri in the Music City Bowl on Monday the 28th. Kind of want to see what people's opinions are of how they think that game's going to turn out. You can give us a score prediction if you want. You can just say, I think Iowa's going to win, or I think Iowa's going to lose. It's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a close game. Whatever you want. I just kind of curious to see what everybody's opinion is. I'm going to leave my opinion out of it because I don't want to taint anybody else's thoughts, and just make them as true to what you want them to be.
Well, I want to say this is an opportunity. And if I was Iowa in this situation, I don't want to go on a big tirade here, but if I'm Iowa in this situation, and it's an 8-4 season, you're not. What is a win going to get you?
The win's going to get him tied with Woody.
Well, and that's fine. He can get that next year when he plays Albany and UMass. Here's what I would do, and I would advocate for this: is I would turn it loose. I would absolutely every play in the playbook is now open. Throw the ball, toss it around the field. Do everything you can to have fun. Here's what the problem is when you start recruiting kids in, especially from the transfer portal, and they look at your season and they say, why in the world would I want to come to Iowa? They don't throw the ball to the wide receivers. This is an opportunity to turn over a new leaf and say, okay, we're going to start throwing the ball down the field. We're going to do 25-yard out routes. We're going to start doing crossing routes in the middle. We're going to start doing fly patterns, and we're going to throw the ball to them this time instead of just not throwing it to them. We're going to open up the playbook. We're going to run reverses. We're going to run flea flickers. We're going to do all the things that we want to do and have fun with it. I don't care. You got beat 35-0 last year. You can't get worse. Well, I mean, you probably could.
You ran your regular game plan.
You didn't do anything last year. You did nothing on offense last year. Your best offensive play was what, a 10-yard run from Marco Lainez? That might have been the biggest play of the game for Iowa last year. Let's open it up. Let's have fun. Let's let these kids enjoy their last games of the season, some of them of their careers at Iowa. Let's play, have fun, do things, go out and do things that are not trend busters.
Yeah, show Missouri of something that they're not expecting.
Yeah, you get a 2nd down and 1, throw it over the top. Everybody else does it, and then you can come back and on third down, you can get your first down on that. But have fun. Go out and do something.
Cut loose and just
see what you've got for next year. If you set the tone now for springtime, I think that's just gonna get people more excited.
It's gonna energize the players too.
Yeah, turn it loose. Let's have it's just an exhibition game. Yeah, if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. Big deal. It's not really. I mean, who's going to look back?
Nobody's going to remember it.
Exactly. I had to look back and say, who did we play last year? Well, yeah, I had Tennessee 35-0. I had to look that up because I thought it was worse. Yeah, just freaking tear it up, man. Just go out and break the trend. Go out and show Missouri that you're more than a rushing team. You don't have Caleb Johnson to fall back on, so throw the ball.
Work on stuff that you would have worked on in spring.
Yeah. Get that offense tuned up. Let those recruits know that you're willing and able to throw the ball down the field.
Absolutely.
Just my thoughts.
No, I completely agree. I have 100%.
I mean, if it would be different if you were playing for a championship that you're going to get to go the next week for a championship game, then you play it closer to the best and you play it the way you play it.
Or if this was, the old format and you were playing in the Rose Bowl, and that's kind of a big game, and you're not probably playing it to maybe work on stuff. You're trying to play it to win your style.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is the Music City Bowl. It's played on December 28th. Nobody's going to remember who played in it next year.
Exactly.
I'd forgotten the fact that we played Kentucky in it 3 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, just have fun. So,
yep.
Anyway, so that's the question. Tell us what you think. As always, if you like the content you have here, give us a like, subscribe to us, catch us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok. Some clips on TikTok as well. Had a few of them go semi-viral recently, and I think this might have one that goes that way this time too, maybe. But yeah, catch us there, and just Spotify as well. We appreciate the listening and the viewership, and want to wish everybody a happy Christmas or a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we got one more show before the end of the year, and then it will basically be basketball 24/7 after that for a couple months.
Right.
So, yeah. Also, again, merch is still available. This is the black dry fit shirt, which fits perfectly. It's comfortable. It's very well done. It's out there on the store. Like I said, I got a couple more days. Well, the 10% off is still available. Obviously not going to get everything for Christmas at this point, but if you want to get something, take advantage of that 10%. So,
absolutely. Good stuff.
All right. Well, with that said, let's wrap it up and finish on Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.